A new study out of UCLA's Center for Scholars and Storytellers, which sounds like nonsense, but still, they have a new study that says that 51.5% of adolescents would like to see more content depicting friendships and platonic relationships. 44.3% of youth felt that romance in media is overused. Around 39% would like to see more depictions of not romantic and not sexual characters, and 47.5% reported that sex is not necessary to the majority of TV shows and movie plots. Now, if this is true, that it's interesting because they're making all those shows. What is that show called? Ecstasy? I can't remember. The show about Euphoria, thank you. About Euphoria, it's like one sex scene after another, and it's all sex and all this stuff. But they're saying that young people would like to see less of this. Now, as you know, I think the most important thing we can be doing in the physical sphere right now is ramping up the protection of pregnant wives. I think we need more pregnant wives. Pregnant wives are a sign that young people are doing what they should be doing if they've been impregnated by their husbands, instead of what everyone is telling them they should be doing. And so you could read this survey as kind of disappointing that these young people are turning away from their basic instincts. But I think there's a more positive way to see this. I hope there is. One of my favorite quotes from the Bible is St. Paul in his letter to the Ephesians saying, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." In other words, we're not dealing with a political fight. We're not dealing with a personal fight. We're dealing with a spiritual fight. And what I like about this quote is that I believe it's literally true. We're not actually fighting this guy or that guy. What we're really fighting is evil in the spiritual realm that affects us here. And you can do that without hating people if you're fearless. If you tell the truth and if you act with righteousness no matter what, if you have faith that's strong enough to be willing to face persecution and maybe, being thrown off Twitter or whatever, and maybe even being killed, if you have that faith, you can fight that fight without hating anybody. You just hate the evil and go after the evil. Sometimes that means hurting a person, like putting him in prison or executing him or whatever, but still, what you're dealing with is the evil. But everything we experience in this world, we experience by material means. This is, as Madonna said, not the Madonna, but Madonna said, this is a material world. We experience the spiritual through the physical. We eat bread and wine to taste the body and blood. Evil moves through a mentally ill woman with a rifle. And love is the same thing. You love your spouse, you make love to your spouse, you kiss your spouse, and you do other things too, not just sex, but you walk together, you hold hands, you chat, you go to the movies. And this isn't just killing time. This is communicating your spiritual love for this person, your inner presence. You're communicating your inner self to the person by physical means. This is the only means we have. There's one good line in this terrible song, What a Wonderful World, which you probably know, but there's one good line in it. I see friends shaking hands, saying, "How do you do?" They're really saying, "I love you." And I think that's true. So often we're talking about a TV show we saw, we're talking about, a meal, we're talking about the news, but what we're really saying to this person is, "I love you, I want to be with you, I want to talk with you." Physical things communicate spiritual truths. The reason that sex scenes in movies are almost always unnecessary and wrong, and I say this as someone who, will cancel my vacation to see a good sex scene, but the reason sex scenes in movies are almost always exploitative, unnecessary, and wrong is because men are stimulated through what they see, through the eye. And the physical power of a woman's nakedness on screen makes it almost impossible to experience the deeper feelings that are being expressed in that scene. Alfred Hitchcock said, I think it was to Truffaut, he said, "You should never show people having sex and you should never show them praying." And he didn't explain why he said that, but I believe the reason is because the image doesn't convey the inner truth. The inner truth is too big to be conveyed by an image, and the image supplants the other truth. The other day, I watched an old movie called Haunted Honeymoon. It's based on a very famous Peter Wimsey mystery by the classic mystery writer Dorothy L. Sayers. I think it was her last Peter Wimsey mystery. It was called, what was it called? Well, I can't remember. But anyway, in this, Lord Peter has married Harriet Vane. This is one of the most famous marriages in mystery fiction. And in the movie, there's this totally wordless scene on the wedding night. They're in this house, and Harriet Vane is played by this absolutely gorgeous, little-known actress named Constance Cummings, and she's waiting in the bedroom for Robert Montgomery. She's standing by the window. It's a moonlit night, And Whimsy comes in and he takes her hand and they stand side by side and look out the window at the moonlit night and they fade to dawn. And I was watching that and I thought that has got to be one of the sexiest sex scenes I have ever seen. Because they're staring out the window at the world and their world is about to change because they're married and they're standing next to each other. You know they're thinking about their bodies and about sex and that they're headed to bed. And that captures something that the sex scene can't. The reason I said that abortion and induced transgenderism and white supremacy and woke racism and queer theory and Jew hatred are all part of the same evil is because they all express the same thing, the denial that this material world is really a language that speaks of the spirit. You can only deny that truth when you live in your mind, in your theories, in your ideologies, where you can convince yourself that the people you are destroying don't have souls. When you see those bodies torn up in Planned Parenthood, when you see what gender-affirming care really means to a body, when you look at what they did to people in the killing fields of Israel, Hamas did to people, purposely, not just accidentally, not just in the horror of war, but with intent, giggling, laughing, calling their parents to brag about it, then we remember in horror what we are and what we should be, not just in ourselves, but to one another. As Winston Churchill said, we are not spirits. We are spirits, not animals. We are spirits, not animals. And we are living right now in a culture that is working overtime to make people forget that with their wokeism, with their theories, with their ideologies, mostly on the left, but hidden on the far side of the right as well, trying to get us to accept ideas and to forget souls, to accept bodies, but to forget spirits. And we're just not going to forget it here. It's not going to happen here. We're not going to do it. We're going to build a new, I'm not going to do it. You're not going to do it. We're going to build a new culture within ourselves and pray to God that that culture will spread to the rest of the country because the one we have now is evil. Like and subscribe for more Klavan-y goodness. And don't forget to subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show wherever you get your podcasts.